Welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlotte and I'm the trauma-informed teacher. This video is going to be all about my classroom management and behavior systems. So normally I would do a video like this in my actual classroom. However, I have really not had a lot of extra time at school recently. We've been very busy getting all of our beginning of the year testing done, having meetings to set the direction for our content teams and things like that. And of course, I've been also doing my principal internship. So I've been quite busy in the evenings, and it's been everything that I could do to just get done with my regular responsibilities. So I'm choosing to go ahead and share this with you when I'm at home on a Saturday because I have a little bit more time. If you hear that my voice sounds a little bit strange, it's because I have been kind of laying around in bed this afternoon. I've been fighting some sort of cold or something this week. My sinuses have been pretty stuffy. I'm on medicine for it, but hopefully after all the rest that I've gotten today and sleeping in for a couple of days this weekend, hopefully on Monday, I'm going to feel much better because I've been kind of like dragging the last like maybe 2 or 3 days at school. So when we talk about classroom management, it's so much more than just what you do when a student gets in trouble for not following your rules. This year we did a professional development with capturing kids' hearts. If you know anything about the program, it's wonderful. It's not really a curriculum, but it's more of just a way of thinking about how we interact with students. And it's really about getting students to take ownership over the culture of their own classroom. So when I first started teaching, something that you needed to do to establish rules together with your class and make agreements, we called it like a class constitution. Something like that. And, you know, we often had students like trace their handprint on it or something like that. This is a similar idea, but they have a very structured approach to how you get students to talk about the way they want their classroom to feel and how people should act in different circumstances. There are questions, which I won't share the exact questions because I think some of that is like trademark. And I don't know how much I can share because our district, paid to have this program and paid to have the professional development and all the materials that go along with it online. So I don't want to break any agreement rules that I might not even be aware of. But basically, to make a long story short, the foundation for everything that goes on in my classroom is a social contract. And so at the beginning of the year, although I do have basic expectations that I say to my students from day one when they first arrived, like we're going to be safe, we're going to, be respectful of each other, we're not going to hurt anyone, those kind of, general things. And I would give a list of consequences to students so they would know what would happen after I have to speak to them once or twice about the same thing, or if they would continue. Those things would be set from day one. But then as the first week of school went on, each day we talked about a different aspect of our classroom culture, and students got to work with their classmates to come up with a list of words that would describe the way that we agree to treat each other and to act responsibly in the classroom. So I will show you a video clip here of my classroom contract. After we created the classroom contract and we finalized it, then all of our students pledged to follow it, and everybody got to sign their name to the contract. So I hung it up in my room along with my consequences, and we refer back to it and we talk about it whenever we need to discuss behavior. There are also very specific ways that you handle students when you see them doing something that breaks one of the social contract expectations. there are 4 questions that you ask students. And basically, the 4 questions are going to get kids to think. Instead of telling them what they're doing wrong and reminding them of what they're supposed to be doing, they get the kids to think about what they're supposed to be doing and verbalize that to you. So the purpose of these 4 questions in what they call the Excel model is to get kids to really reflect on their own behavior and get kids to hold themselves accountable, as well as holding each other accountable in the classroom. So those things are the foundation of my classroom management system and my classroom behavior plan. As a team, we have a behavior calendar, and this is something that I used when I was a young teacher, and I used back in the day when we had colored card charts, which I no longer use. Some of our teachers do still use something similar with a clip down chart, but I personally, I don't use that part of the system. But to follow the grade level team, the way that we do things together and we report together needs to be consistent for parents, especially if we have, maybe siblings one year that might be in different classes or something like that. So to follow my team, I am using the behavior calendar, where basically if I had to talk to a student more than once about something in a day, then I would put them on yellow, and that would be highlighted on their date on their behavior calendar with a little note to parents about what it was for. It's just a warning. And then if that behavior continued and there were further consequences, then the student moves to another color and another color, and that is all printed on the calendar. So every day parents have feedback about what their child's day was like, any notes about any concerns, and they have the opportunity to reach out, or, if I feel the need, then I will also reach out if a student's behavior has been a pattern over that day or over time. So those are like how we report and how we track things. But in my classroom, I try to focus more on positive behaviors. So I use Class Dojo, and I monitor often the types of behaviors that I want to see in students. I will give students points, and these points are the same, they're interchangeable in my classroom for dollars. I know there's controversy surrounding giving students rewards for their behavior, because there are some schools of thought that say that students should not be rewarded for doing the basic things that they are expected to do. However, often the things that I'm talking to students about are skills that they're learning, not skills that they already have and that they're just choosing not to use. I might handle that in a little bit different way. So whatever it is that's happening frequently in my classroom that's creating a disturbance to the learning, that's something that I would recognize that the students that are doing the correct thing, and I would give positive points, which often enables the students who are not on board to straighten themselves out without me having to actually speak to them individually. This is especially helpful at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year. At the beginning, because the students aren't used to the grade level expectations yet, or the classroom expectations, and you're trying to train them to follow along so that you can get more done in a shorter amount of time and be efficient in your classroom instruction. At the end of the school year, it is a vital tool because it helps me draw attention to the positive at a time when students just might be very distracted by either the weather or, tired from getting ready for testing or whatever it happens to be, because it's been at that point a number of months that they are with the same students, and sometimes they get on each other's nerves and they just get tired of following basic instructions. So I find that Class Dojo is a great way for me to keep track of these points and be able to give students rewards, which then motivates my students to work harder. I do a store that allows them to spend their points or their dojo bucks. They only have the store once every month though, so they're saving throughout that month, and once we have the store, then that further motivates them for the next store. So it does provide that extra level of motivation and incentive for my students, and I do try to focus really on those skills that, maybe a large number of students in the class are having difficulty with, and really reward based on the behaviors that I need to see in that circumstance. So that's kind of like the gist of what I do for general classroom, like tracking of behaviors, setting of the expectations. Obviously, classroom management, though, is also about how do you direct and organize things that are going on in the classroom. For that part of my classroom behavior and classroom management plan, I make sure that at the beginning of the year, it's very clear where different activities happen in my classroom, where they can use different materials, how they use different materials. I make sure that whenever we introduce something that they haven't used before, I go over the procedures for, where to get it, how to use it properly, how to put it away properly, what I expect for that particular material. I make sure that my room is labeled well and set up in a way that it's kid friendly, so that any student that walked into my room could figure out how to put things away and where they go. I think that's really important, as well as thinking about what the physical flow of your classroom is like, so that when students are moving around the room to get to different things, that it actually makes sense to them, the direction that they'll be traveling to do different activities. I also have mailboxes for student papers, so that when we are saving things that are going to go home, they can go in the mailboxes and not be cluttering up their desks. Students have a special folder for my subjects that they are putting work in that's not finished yet, so that we can find it. And I think some of these little organizational things just cut down on some of the behaviors that tend to distract students, because they're not looking for things, or they're not traveling, all over the classroom to try to get to something, and then on the way getting in trouble by doing something with another student, getting them off task. So I think it's really important to consider, how does your room function, and is it functioning the way that you need it to function, so that learning can happen in a smooth way. Just this last week, we've been in school now for 4 weeks. This was our 4th week of instruction, and this past week was the first week that I actually started really cracking down on some of the behaviors that I had been teaching students to do, because in the beginning, you're just really kind of setting the ground rules, teaching them everything, taking your classroom expectations and connecting those to the school-wide expectations, which in our case, we use PBIS. So we have positive behaviors that are listed on a poster on the wall for different areas of our school grounds. And it's important that students understand, how do the classroom expectations relate to the expectations on the PBIS matrix. All of those things we were teaching students in the first couple of weeks. Last week, I just kind of monitored students and mentioned to them the things that they are going to start missing time for. And when I say missing time, one of my consequences that I give students if I see that a behavior is repetitive is making them have restricted recess. Restricted recess is a recess that they are still allowed to play, but they have to play by themselves. They can't talk to anyone. They're in a particular area of the playground, so they don't have access to everything that they would normally have access to, but they can still do movement, so we're not taking away their time that they're getting, that, for moving. So I started to talk to students about those types of things last week, and there were a few basic things that I did have students spend some restricted recess for, but this past week was the first time that I really started cracking down on things like hallway behavior, because that was a focus that our principal had set for the week. And I think that the students had been working on the same expectations for hallway behavior pretty much since they were in kindergarten. So at this point, I felt like that was a safe one, that I could just say, if you're doing this behavior, you're going to automatically go to a warning, a yellow, and you're automatically going to miss some time. So I did have a few students that kind of got caught off guard this week because they just weren't making themselves think about what they were supposed to be doing. And, it surprised a few of them, but once you start doing that with your class, then automatically everybody falls in line, and it really pays off in your instruction that you're able to get done later on. I did have a few tears with some of my students this week when they realized that they had not been concentrating and just, thinking about what they should be doing, but we worked those out, and, I talked to the parents, and everything is fine. It's just one of those things that as a third grader, I think that, much of the misbehavior is not willful misbehavior. In most cases, much of it is immature behavior where they're not used to monitoring themselves. And the only way for them to get accustomed to monitoring themselves is to start, following through with the consequences and doing it quickly, so that there's not a lot of next time this is going to happen, next time that's going to happen. It just needs to be okay, you all know how to do this now, so this is your warning as a class. The next time this happens, you're going to have an automatic next level, moving your color, missing some time to think about it. So we started working on those things this week. Another thing that I really have started working on, because I think it's going to be super important later on, is transitioning from their desks in the morning where they do their journal down to the floor where we start our day, our morning meeting, talk about our good things, and then get started on our reading phonics lesson. It's important to me that we don't lose time, because if we lose time, then that beginning of the day that we have with the homeroom means that class will get less instruction in reading, because we have to switch and we have to stop at a certain time. So it's really important to me that they can transition quickly at the beginning like that. It's also important to me that both of my groups can transition from that carpet time back to their seats to where we are doing something else, or even to stations, or transitioning in between their stations. And so it was, I think, Thursday or Friday, one of those days, I had my students in one of my groups actually practice moving from the floor to the stations. We had to do it 5 times without talking, because it was something that they were just really dragging and wasting a lot of time. And so, after they had done that back and forth 5 times correctly, then they were like, oh, we really don't want to have to do this. This is really annoying. So I think just things like that, once you have everything in place and your students know what the expectations are, then following through with those routines and going back and saying, okay, we're about to do this. Remember, if you do not follow the procedures for this, we're going to have to practice. And remember what that's like. So that after you've made them practice, several times repetitively, for one thing, then they know after that what that means and they don't want to do it. So it's important, I think, especially with young students, to consistently remind them, this is what I want to see when you're doing this activity. This is what good behavior looks like. This is what, look at your contract and say, okay, this is what being responsible looks like right now. This is what being respectful would look like right now. All of these things, because they do have a hard time like remembering and applying to different activities. So you kind of have to help them make those connections, at least at this time of the year. So all of those things are important to classroom management. Another really important piece of classroom management is making sure that you're building relationships with your students. And there's lots of different ways to do that, but mainly being a warm person, smiling when you have to correct them, being kind about the way that you talk to them, it goes a long way. Getting to know them as people. One of the things that I recently did was ask for sports schedules so that when I have an opportunity, I can show up at one of my students' sporting events. And I talked to my teammate about this, and we're planning on doing some of those together as a team, because I think it'll be a lot of fun for us to do that. So those are some of the things that you can do. Eating lunch with your students, you may have to do that, but are you sitting and talking to your students, or are you sitting and talking to the other staff at that time? So taking some intentional time to like talk to students during their lunchtime is a good way to do it. Allowing students to share their writing that they've written about personal things when they want to, share it with a class, commenting. Those are ways to build relationships with students. And I think also just offering some periods of your day or of your week that you plan fun activities that, although they're educational, that they're going to be highly motivating and interesting to students, and then enjoying them with them, whether that be a game, some opportunity that they can laugh and be kids and still be learning, but just something that is going to be really fun for them. Those things all help build relationships. Grading students at the door is part of our regular expectation in our school, and it's something that I've always liked to do, but I'm challenging myself a little bit this year to talk to my students a little bit more when they come in. Instead of just like being at the door and saying hi, I'm actually, intentionally saying their name, asking them questions about things I know that are going on. And if I notice that they're a little off, making sure I take that extra moment to kind of figure out what might be going on. Those are all things that no matter how long you've taught, I think you can always do just a little bit better at. So those, I think, really help support all the other procedures and routines that you put in place. Because if students care about their relationship with you, then they're going to be more likely to follow your direction. And we know that's true. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're leading little people or big people. Any people like to be cared about, and they're much more likely to do what you ask them to if they know that you care about them. I hope that this has been interesting to you to hear how I do my classroom management and behavior plan. If you have any questions that I didn't cover, please drop them in the comments, and I'm happy to share other ideas with you about whatever you might need to know. Thanks for being here. If you're not already subscribed, I'd love to have you in the community. Just hit the little subscribe button and the bell so that you get all of my latest videos. As always, no matter where you are, don't forget to work hard, be kind, and amazing things will happen. Bye-bye.